So when they're called, I should just allow them to talk.
Yeah, you can promote panels because allowed to talk will not show their picture. The difference between allowed to talk
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
panelists is you see the picture with allowed. I mean, with panelists, don't see that with allowed to
Okay.
talk.
So then they're in the room, and I guess we just leave them in when they're done speaking.
Oh, then we move them back to attendee and bring the next person in.
Okay.
So it's a three-step process: promote the panelists, let's speak, bring the next person in, and then move them back to attendee.
Okay. And I know that Alder Brackeen has got the latest speaker list. I might have lost audio.
Nope, we can hear you. We can hear you fine.
I can hear you now. Yeah. Okay.
That's Mr. Taylor.
Hi.
Hi.
I guess I'm a little early.
We're gonna start in 3 minutes, Mr. Taylor. Just hang in there.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. All right.
All right.
Excuse me, Alice, Joelle again. Is Lindsay Kashgarian here yet?
I do not see Lindsay Karskarian. No.
No? Oh, boy.
Yeah.
All right.
Good evening. Let's see. Who do we have here today? Hello, Alder.
Hi, Mr. Chair.
One, two, three. We need one more Alder, and then I will begin.
Hey, Mickey. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Thank you. I can. Thanks.
Now we have Ward 3.
Good evening, colleagues.
Mr. Lugo, what's up?
Hi.
How the winter? Mr. Lugo and Mr. Brown, what can we do for you? How come I can't hear Mr. Lugo? No. There it is.
Okay.
That's all they're saving.
Yes. We have a quorum now.
Perfect. Hello, colleagues. All right. I'm going to read the notice for the record. As soon as I find it. Okay, here we go. City of New Haven, Health and Human Services Committee, Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. via teleconference. Board of Alders notice, New Haven. The Health and Human Services Committee of the New Haven Board of Alders will hold a public hearing at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, June 2nd via teleconference to hear and act on the following legislative item. LM 2020-0224. From the Peace Commission submitting a resolution calling Congress and the President of the United States to prepare for a health and climate crisis by transferring funds from military budget to cities for human needs, jobs, and environmentally sustainable economy, and placing a non-binding advisory referendum to that effect on November 3rd, 2020, New Haven municipal election. This item is on file and available for public inspection in the office of the city clerk, room 202, 200 Orange Street, New Haven, per order Honorable Darrell J. Brackeen Jr., Chair attest, Honorable Michael B. Smart, City Clerk. For disability-related accommodation, please call 203-946-7833 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY prior to the meeting. And at this time, I am going to call the attendance by way of individuals that I see on the screen. And you can respond by saying here. Alder Cupo.
Here.
Vice Chair Hurt.
Here.
Alder Winter.
Here.
Alder Sabin.
Here.
Thank you for all being here. And now that a quorum is established, first of all, I'm going to start this meeting slightly different in light of everything that we've been experiencing. And we are the Health and Human Services, which was established on the basis of ensuring that all humankind is granted equity. I'm going to actually read a prayer from Dr. Martin Luther King. It is entitled "A Prayer of Nonviolence." And God grant that we will continue to move on all humankind of goodwill, and all those who are confronted with oppression in this world will move on with this method, not with the method of violence, not with the method of retaliatory violence, not with any method that seeks to retaliate, but a method that seeks to redeem. Amen. Therefore, the quorum has been established. We will begin with the proceedings of this hearing. It is actually with great pleasure that we have gotten to this point. This item has been with us for some time, and I am glad to see this work move forward. I will now introduce the makers of the proposed item, the Peace Commission, and the interim chair, Joelle Fishman. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Joelle Fishman, 17 Hobart Street, New Haven. Alder Brackeen, Alder Hurt, and the Health and Human Services Committee. Thank you first for that prayer.
That I'm bringing her in as panel. Sorry. It'll be a second before she pops back up. There we go. Okay, sorry, Joelle, go ahead.
Okay. Can you see me and hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
I'm not sure exactly what happened. Should I start from the beginning or can I just?
Yes. Yep. Name and address for the record.
Okay, all right. Joelle Fishman, 17 Hobart Street, New Haven, Connecticut. Thank you for the prayer from Martin Luther King Jr. Alder Brackeen, Alder Hurt, Health and Human Services Committee. I currently serve as the acting chair for the City of New Haven Peace Commission, and other commissioners will be speaking throughout the hearing. We greatly appreciate this opportunity to seek approval for a non-binding referendum on the November 3rd ballot, which reads, shall Congress prepare for health and climate crises by transferring funds from military budget to cities for human needs, jobs, and an environmentally sustainable economy. That transfer of funds is at the core of the fight for every person to be treated with dignity and respect, for every person to have healthcare, housing, a living wage job, food security, in a peaceful and sustainable world. It is connected to the uprising and cry for justice for George Floyd and the demand for a new normal after the COVID-19 pandemic that addresses white supremacy, systemic racism, and the enormous economic inequalities where a third of children in the Hill go to bed hungry in the shadow of wealthy Yale and Yale New Haven Hospital. 300,000 people in Connecticut could become homeless in the next coming months, and immigrants are left out of any relief. We need a new normal that lifts everyone up, not just the military, industrial, prison, fossil fuel complex. A new normal that heeds the cry of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. against the evils of racism, poverty, militarism, and now the climate crisis. In that spirit, the Peace Commission offers this non-binding referendum. It will allow New Haven voters to express their hopes and dreams, and perhaps inspire other cities to do the same, building the momentum needed to create the political will. To date, 24 organizations of all kinds have endorsed this effort. Some will testify tonight, and many more are coming on. We're honored to have expert testimony today from Lindsay Kashgarian, Director of the National Priorities Project. We respect the untold hours you as alders have had to spend struggling to deal with the city's budget deficits and what that means for our community. We urge you to vote favorably to place this referendum to transfer funds from the bloated and destructive military budget to human needs, jobs, and climate justice on November's ballot as a positive contribution in a time of crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any, well, actually, let's talk about procedure. For any questions, you can please use the raised hand icon. I believe it's here. Or maybe it's not. Does everyone see the raised hand icon? Because I don't. Okay. Well, if not, you'll just have to raise your hand in the screen and hope that I see you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. Oh, you do. Okay, Alder Sabin.
Thanks, Chair Barkeen. I just wanted to say thank you, Joel, for being here for all your hard work in putting this together. I'm the aldermanic representative on the Peace Commission, and we've had many conversations about putting this non-binding referendum together, and I'm excited that it's moving forward. And I want to thank you, Joel, for your leadership in making this happen. So thank you, and hope you are staying safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, Alder Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Joel, for all your hard work organizing this and leading this effort, or one of the leaders of this effort. It's great to see so many groups involved. I know this is something that folks have been pushing for a long time, and I was curious to understand like what kind of response we've received thus far from the federal delegation. It's definitely something I support, and I think when I think of like Senator Murphy and Senator Blumenthal, I feel like I'm generally on the same page with them, but they often seem to be touting support for the submarine programs that run out of the state or other parts of the military related economy that are centered here in Connecticut. I was curious about how they have responded in the past to things like this.
Should I respond? Yes, okay. It's hard when you're not around the table together to know exactly how to proceed. Well, I've always said Connecticut is hostage to the military industrial complex and hostage in terms of jobs in particular. We have a new opportunity and situation developing, and we've paired this with the issue of environmentally sustainable economy. And just off the shore of New London now are windmills that's going to be producing electricity, that's creating a lot of new jobs. And as we transform the economy to a sustainable green economy, it's going to open up thousands and thousands of jobs. So that's one answer. And if we don't move on this now, we won't be able to go forward as a nation. And people are in the streets now because it's police violence, but it's also all the other violence that goes along with institutionalized racism. It's not just Black people in the street. Everybody's in the street because we don't want that anymore. And we can't resolve those issues without creating a huge number of jobs that meet people's needs. And I look forward to this expert testimony from Linda Kashgarian, which I think will provide some of those answers. So I think that if, as a city, we allow the opportunity for the voters to express themselves, and then we can sit down with our congressional delegation and see if they can provide some leadership for the country on this.
Thank you, Joelle. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you both. And I have to say that there was actually quite robust testimony our last go around with department heads in particular coming in support of this item. So across the board, I believe the city is ready to see this type of change, and hopefully our federal delegates will hear us this time. So again, thank you for your testimony. Next. Next we have, and I do apologize, and just correct me in terms of your name, Lindsay Kashgarian of the National Priorities Project. Please state your name and address for the record. Your testimony will be limited to 3 minutes.
Oh, excuse me. Excuse me, Chair
Yes.
Brackeen. This is the special testimony that we were having
Yes.
for 10 minutes.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's fine. Perfect. Sorry. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Joelle. Thank you, Alder Brackeen. Thanks all of you for having me. Thank you to Joelle and the Peace Commission for the work that you're doing on this. My name is Lindsay Kashgarian. My address is 660 Florence Road, Florence, Massachusetts, 01062. I'm the program director for the National Priorities Project at the Institute for Policy Studies. We are a federal budget organization that educates citizens on what our federal budget priorities are to empower them to make those priorities match their own values. So I've been asked to testify today on the Pentagon budget. And I have a short presentation that I'll be sharing. I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you in just a moment.
Need to make you a co-host to do that. Hold on.
I can do that.
She's all set. You should be all set.
Okay. Aha, yes. All right. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm here to talk today about our misplaced priorities as a country and how the Pentagon budget starves our communities. My first slide is a demonstration of our nation's federal discretionary budget. This is the roughly $1.4 trillion that Congress allocates each year to a variety of priorities. The major exclusions from this pot of money are Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. But all of our federal housing programs, federal education programs, the vast majority, public health programs such as the CDC, science and medical research programs, all of that is in this budget that you're looking at right now. As you can see, more than half of it goes to the military. There are much smaller slivers for priorities, including housing and community services, government administration, veterans benefits, health and public health, education. The federal public education budget is really shameful. So all of those things have to squeeze into less than half of this pot of money, while more than half goes to the Pentagon. This shows you the trend over time. And so there's a line graph here. You can see the orange line on top is military funding back to 1976, and the blue line beneath is program funding for anti-poverty programs, including rental assistance and homelessness programs. We include education programs as anti-poverty programs, income security, welfare, health, public health and community health services for low-income people, and discretionary food programs. And as you can see, going back for decades, this country has invested much more in our military than we've invested in solving poverty. This is where some of that money investment in the military is going. This here is a map that shows all of the military installations that the United States maintains around the world. There are more than 800 military installations that the United States maintains at a cost of roughly $150 billion a year. Many of these are holdovers from World War II. We still have bases in Italy and Germany and Japan, and we're paying billions of dollars to keep a military presence in those places. And that is money that we are not investing in human needs here at home. This second map shows all of the places where the United States is currently involved in counter-terror activity. So it is not confined to our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. As you can see, it's throughout Africa, throughout the Middle East, throughout Eastern Europe. There are dozens of sites where the United States military is engaging in counter-terror activities. And since 2001, we are on the hook for approximately $6.4 trillion in costs for the war on terror. And just to put that in context, 6.4 trillion is how much we've spent on the wars. The last stimulus bill, which was unprecedented, the CARES Act in terms of government spending was only 2 trillion. So we spent more than 3 times as much so far on the war on terror as we've spent on the coronavirus crisis and dealing with the economic and health consequences of that. As another piece of context, the cost of transitioning the entire United States electrical grid to renewable energy has been estimated at about $4.5 trillion. So over the last 20 years, we could have made that transition fully and completed it and still had nearly $2 trillion to spare. We've done a study together with the Poor People's Campaign at the Institute for Policy Studies, where we have identified $350 billion in military funding cuts that we could make by transitioning to a human needs budget and actually make us safer than we are now. That's because our foreign bases, our wars, and our weapons races against other countries actually spur military investment and military extension by countries that we consider rivals. So if we pull back from many of those, our presences on bases around the world, if we pull back from our current wars, and if we reduce our weapon systems to only those that we really need, in turn, the countries that we see as rivals will step down their military action. This is easy to imagine if you think of what would happen if China opened a military base in Cuba and the US military response that would result from that. It's the same premise operating in reverse. And the major cuts that we've identified are closing foreign bases that we don't need, ending our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which are still costing us about $70 billion a year, and ending weapons programs and nuclear weapons programs that are not contributing to our safety and that are funneling dollars into the pockets of Pentagon contractors. We know that while jobs are frequently used as a reason to keep funneling money to those contractors, in fact, investing in the Pentagon is a poorer form of job creation, and we can create more jobs dollar for dollar by investing in things like renewable energy, building retrofits for energy efficiency, primary and secondary education, higher education. And so this chart shows you over on the left, the job creation from a $260 billion investment in our national security system, our Pentagon and federal defense, versus the jobs that could be created in many of these other investments. And so the blue bar shows the level of job creation from our current investment in the Pentagon, and the black lines show the missed opportunity, the jobs that we could be creating but are not by investing in the Pentagon instead of these other things. Now, what if we look at New Haven specifically? For that $6.4 trillion for the war on terror, New Haven taxpayers have paid an average of $79 million every single year since 2001. As you know, the newly approved New Haven city budget is now 567 million. So that's a significant percentage of your annual city budget. An additional 79 million, if it came back to New Haven, could create over 1,400 infrastructure jobs. It could allow you to transition to fully renewable residential power for every household in the city, or it could provide quality childcare for every New Haven child between the ages of 2 and 4. Now, we all know that we're in a very unique historical moment with the pandemic right now. A mere 10% cut to the Pentagon budget, a $75 billion cut to our current $750 billion budget, could save New Haven taxpayers nearly $7 million this year. And if we look at the current crisis, that money could cover 6 months of rent for 5,000 low-income renters in the city. It could cover daily COVID testing for 4% of the city every single day for a year at $10 a test, or it could cover hospitalization costs for 500 COVID patients. And finally, I want to point out that not only are these cuts a good idea because they would enhance the welfare of the people of New Haven, but they are actually popular. The majority of people in the United States, when asked if they would support reallocating money away from the Pentagon and towards priorities like education, healthcare, and the environment, said yes, they would support shifting that money. And so this is something that's very important for members of Congress to know, for our delegations from different cities to know that this is a popular shift. It is more than half, and it is actually more bipartisan than you would think as well. I don't have a slide showing it, but it is a strong majority of Democrats and a majority of Republicans also who say yes, that they would support a shift in that spending because people recognize just how excessive the Pentagon budget has grown. That's my last slide, and I thank you for your time and thank you for having me testify.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So everyone on mute. Okay. And if we could, thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Actually, before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge the chair of the Black and Hispanic Caucus has joined us. Alder Clyburn is here. And also, I see a hand raised in our attendees box, and I'm just wondering if that can be attended to. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. He's going to be next. So
got it. Okay. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Please signify by raising your hand. All right, seeing none, thank you very much for the very informative presentation. And it will be submitted into the record. Next, as we've just noted, we will have our Reverend Pastor Kelsey Steele of the Varick AME Zion Church. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
you lost him. Where'd you go? We lost him. All right, while we try to get back, we bring Adrian in while we try to get Pastor Steele back. Oh, there we go. Welcome back. All right, he's back. You're up, Pastor.
Oh, sorry about that. To the Board of Alders committee, I would like to make the following testimony. I did submit it through email as well, and I'm in favor of including
Please state your name and address for the record. I'm sorry, Reverend.
And you muted yourself. You got to unmute yourself, sir.
All right, Reverend Kelsey GL Steele, 242 Dixwell.
Thank you.
And thank you. And I'm in favor of including a non-binding referendum on the November ballot in New Haven because I believe that Congress should prepare for health and climate crisis by transferring funds from military budget to cities for human needs jobs and an environmental sustainable economy. Why do I care? Because climate change is a health crisis. And it's dangerous for us to walk into our collective future unprepared. And that danger couldn't be more apparent as the world faces a pandemic that is both a symptom of climate destruction and an illustration of how it exacerbates diseases. The climate crisis affects people's health in myriads of interconnected ways, starting from birth. Every child born today will have their health defined by climate change, according to the November 2019 report on health and climate in the British Medical Journal. So please put this on the ballot in November. And so I just wanted to go on record to say that I do support this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony, Reverend. Next up, we have Adrian Hugh of the New Haven Climate Movement. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Hello, my name is Adrian Huck. My address is 19 Commodore Hall Drive in Derby, Connecticut. Good evening, Alders, and thank you for having me tonight. My name is Adrian, and I am a New Haven High School student speaking on behalf of the New Haven Climate Movement. I'm testifying in support of the New Haven Peace Commission's proposed non-binding referendum for the November ballot, which reads, "Shall Congress prepare for health and climate crises by transferring funds from the military budget to cities for human needs, jobs, and an environmentally sustainable economy?" The pandemic has changed life as we know it, but it's also shown how our country's militaristic budget priorities have left us woefully unprepared for a public health crisis. With our country's spending priorities so out of whack, with the federal military budget absorbing 69% of our national treasury, I can't imagine how unprepared our country will be for climate disaster. US militarism degrades the environment and contributes directly to climate change. The fossil fuel industry relies on militarization to uphold its operations around the globe. Overinvestment in the military comes at the cost of underinvesting in other areas, including human and community needs, and of course, environmental sustainability. Compared to the $6.4 trillion spent on war in the past 20 years, the cost of shifting the US power grid to 100% renewable energy is estimated to cost $4.5 trillion. So instead of funding endless wars, we could have shifted off our country's fossil fuel reliance with money to spare. Placing this referendum on the ballot could help us redirect significant money from the military towards our city's needs and implementing solutions to climate change. Out of the federal taxes paid by taxpayers in New Haven, nearly $160 million went towards military spending. Those tax dollars could have instead paid for creating 2,159 clean energy jobs, or even equipped 345,662 households with wind power for 1 year. This would equip all New Haven homes with clean energy with money to spare for other community needs, such as healthcare or school funding. Alders, you know well the financial crisis our city continues to face. It's time to take a stand for the funds our community needs and deserves and stop feeding into the unethical killings and widespread climate and environmental destruction carried out by our federal military. Through this referendum, we have an opportunity to help change the direction of where our funding goes and help New Haven thrive. After this pandemic is behind us, we cannot go back to business as usual and continue destroying our planet. Alders, I know when you passed the climate emergency resolution proposed by my group, New Haven Climate Movement, last year. I know you are not climate deniers and want to address climate change. However, we cannot address climate change without climate justice. and militarism is an opponent to both of those things. We must have anti-militarism at the core of major climate solutions. Dozens of city leaders around the world have committed to a green recovery from COVID-19, and we should too. Let's move towards a more just and sustainable future, starting with placing this referendum on New Haven's November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we have our longtime Peace Commissioner and founder, Mr. Alfred Marder. Please state your name and address for the record.
There you go. Go ahead, Mr. Martyr.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address you on this very important matter. I am Alfred Marder. I live at 20 Mumford Road in New Haven, and I am a founding member of the City of New Haven Peace Commission. I urge you to endorse a resolution to allow the people of New Haven to vote on this referendum that calls for the reduction of the military budget for human needs. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, consisting of all the mayors of large cities, have endorsed this campaign. The present federal military budget is 69% of the entire national budget. On top of that, $1 trillion is being devoted to modernizing the nuclear weapon arsenal, which is capable of wiping out the entire civilization of the world. At the same time, the New Haven Register reports that 50% of the people living in New Holville have difficulty buying food at the end of the month, trailed slightly by Fairhaven. 80,000 families in Connecticut do not have cards to buy food stamps at the grocery store. Our children are going hungry because schools are closed where they were getting meals. At the same time, warehouses with killing machines are absolutely loaded. Our city, like all the cities and state, are in deep financial trouble. We have the responsibility to speak up for our children and our neighbors, and we must put an end to this madness. I urge you to endorse this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marder, for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Marder, for your longtime support and your service to the city of New Haven. Next, we have Chaz Carmone of Ice the Beef. And actually, Al, if we can get Juan Patterson and Manuel Camacho on the lineup, that'd be great. Please state your name and address for the record.
Chaz Carmen, 60 Springside Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
You may be.
Okay. So we are living in troubled times. It is so important that we find ways to help our cities financially. Our school system is so important. We see that during this pandemic, many students across America did not have what they need to do what they have to do for school. I work in the school system. I know children who did not get laptops in my city. When cities got shut down, kids still need to be educated. This shows the importance of why we should make sure that we put all we can into investing in our children's future. It is important to take some of these funds from the military and put it into education. Many teachers in the school system, they buy supplies themselves. They spend a lot of their own money to get supplies for their students. If there are any way that we can to help our teachers and to help our children, we must do it. And I think one of the major ways is all that money that's going to the military can start going to the youth. We got to remember that the children are our future. And by these children, we are bringing life. We are investing in life. When we invest in the military, we are investing in safety, but also in death. Because when you go into a war, someone's going to have to die. So I really stand for us to get this money out of the military and get it into the children and invest it into our future. Because time and time again, we see schools go without supplies and schools go without computers for our children. They are our future. We can make our schools better. We can make our future brighter. So let's move these funds into life and not death. Our children are in need all across America. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your service to the city, to Ice the Beef. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the Majority Leader, Richard Furlow, for joining us. Next up, we have Mr. Juan Patterson of Ice the Beef. If you can just state your name and your address for the record.
Hold on, I bring him back. 1 second.
Okay.
Where'd you go, sir?
I know you guys can hear me. I don't know if you wanted me to start.
Yep, just state your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Juan Patterson. I live on 160 Hazel Street, apartment 37. We are at a point in time where we must stop prioritizing war when it comes to our country. We consider ourselves the greatest and strongest country, which we boast as a proud achievement over all these years we fought. Yet we still spend trillions on the army as our education and infrastructure continues to struggle all throughout America. We need to help our citizens instead of harming others. At this point in time of the COVID-19 pandemic, our community has been doing the best they can to work together. Our investment is in the Army and it's out of control. We are at a point where hospitals are running out of beds. In the field of education, teachers and students are still trying to figure out a once-in-a-lifetime crisis. 69% of the budget is absorbed by the military. Once $160 million are paid by residents of CT, their school systems, referring to New Haven, that run out of paper during school to print or to give students to write notes. Now with this pandemic, the Board of Ed is left overwhelmed, figuring out how to grade students from marking period 3 and 4 and considering if they should even pick them up and grade them or just stay with 1 and 2. I believe we should invest in the field of education and infrastructure because when you invest in education, you invest in the future of our community. And you invest in infrastructure, you invest in more opportunities for the youth. Seniors are left without prom, and some are still figuring out what they're going to do for college. And dealing with this pandemic and not being around their role models or being able to speak face to face, some are left overwhelmed and feeling hopeless and in despair. I urge you all to consider where we should invest our money and consider the youth of New Haven and all Connecticut overall. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Juan, for your testimony. Next, we will have Manuel Camacho from Ice the Beef. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Manuel Camacho. I live 213 Pine Street, New Haven, Connecticut.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I support placing this non-binding referendum on the November 3rd ballot. I believe that instead of solely concentrating on the funding of our military, we should fund the many other fundamental aspects of our nation. These include the education of future generations, the health of those who have to worry about being denied care because they don't have health care, and the thousands of citizens who go without jobs due to insufficient job funding. According to the NPP, it is said that with the funds that went to the military in 2018, we could have used those funds to get 3,410 scholarships for university students for 4 years. that is giving our next generation of leaders a chance to make an impact on the world for the better. Many of them become doctors, engineers, scientists, and many other impactful professions that help develop us as a nation. Yet we use those funds to develop weapons and armed vehicles that serve rather less important if not used. Why continue to fund war when we can fund our future for the better? I urge you all to support this bill and help us gain a better advantage when facing a crisis like this for the coming generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Manuel, for your testimony on tonight. Next, we have Millie Greneau of the Peace Commission. Please state your name and address for the record.
Millie, you will need to unmute yourself. We can hear you. Okay.
I wasn't able to unmute her.
Okay. Yeah, no, she has to unmute herself. Joe, if you want to call Millie to make sure that she does not have any difficulty. And while we do that,
I will call Tyler Wakefield.
Go to the Wakefield
of Sunrise, New Haven.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Please state your name and address for the record.
Tyler Wakefield, 699 Elm Street, number 2, New Haven, Connecticut.
Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Tyler Wakefield. I'm 24 years old, and I organize with Sunrise Movement New Haven, a youth-led movement to stop climate change and create millions of good green jobs. I'm speaking in support of placing this non-binding resolution on the ballot.
I think we have.
2 nights ago, I sat exhausted, heartbroken, and raged. I watched on a tiny phone screen live helicopter footage of protests around the country. The broadcast split its screen in 3, with 2 smaller divisions showing a liquor store burning in Philadelphia and a crowd in Birmingham. And their prized widescreen selection showed a ring of National Guard troops encircling peaceful protesters in Minneapolis. The broadcaster's voice was heightened, full of adrenaline from covering such a moment. Now, I've been told by the police officers I spoke with that this tactic here, where soldiers surround the protesters and then slowly inch in, is called tightening the noose. I wish I was surprised to hear such language. I wish I screamed at the phone in rage. This country, founded on genocide, built on slavery, and enriched by foreign looting, continues to tighten the noose for all those it doesn't shower with the privilege of inherited wealth, tax breaks, free passes, and the benefit of doubt reserved for us white folks. As the Indigenous and Black community in this country continue to be forced into poverty, constant threat of racist state violence, and recently the precision-targeted devastation of COVID-19, the noose is only getting tighter. It's the year 2020. We've been at this experiment of democracy for 244 years. When will we learn that the lives of our neighbors, their education, and their health is more valuable than the missiles, planes, bombs to be used in massacring innocent civilians abroad? When will we learn that a military-industrial complex does not manufacture weapons to be used abroad, but manufactures weapons to be used abroad and on our streets? We've yet to learn, and this democratic experiment has a deadline coming up very fast. The scientific community has been explicitly clear for decades, and they've grown increasingly alarmed in the past few years. Climate change, left unchecked, will dismantle our civilization as we know it. They are telling us we have 10 years to cut emissions in half if we want to preserve a stable climate. Rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented change is needed in every aspect of society to prevent climate catastrophe, they say. This is our final wake-up call. We do not get another chance at this. The United States military pollutes more carbon than 140 countries combined. Either we reverse our obsession with violent domination, or we experience a 21st century filled with constant catastrophe, devastation, soldiers on our streets, and seas washing those streets away.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any other members of the committee wishing to ask any questions? Seeing none, Tyler, you can just submit the rest of your testimony for the record. Thank you so much for your time. Millie, you are up. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Millie Greneau. I live at 45 Moorland Road in New Haven, and I'm honored to be here with all of you alders and with the wonderful people who have already testified ahead of me and said so many things so powerfully. I don't have to repeat them. I'm speaking as a senior citizen living in New Haven, as a grandmother, as a person who has had the good fortune to live and work in Bolivia, Peru, and Spain, and now have the privilege of living in a decent home and having a job that is meaningful for me and provides an oasis in the overwhelm for others. I believe that we as citizens now have not only the opportunity, but the desire, necessity, as the speakers have said, to make our country become what has never been before. A nation that respects and furthers the needs of all peoples, regardless of sex, heritage, religion, place of origin, and doesn't try to make America first. We are simply a nation among other nations. We are human beings with other human beings around the world. It's time for us to be a nation that uses its vast natural resources, its people talent, and its economic wealth to foster life, as the Reverend has said, as the young people have said, not death. As a mental health professional and as an ordinary human being, I believe it is time for us to help our Connecticut delegations in DC to face this stark reality. It is time for us to let them know that we demand a change in how our money is used. Yes, they want to protect jobs in Connecticut, but at what cost? And as the other speakers have said, those jobs could be something else. I remember a veteran testifying about how many of his buddies suffer from PTSD and how many of them are committing suicide. And their PTSD is not only from actual physical injuries, but also from the realization that they killed people because they didn't want to kill. They didn't want to kill. Do we want our money to be doing the same? GE and Ford shifted gears a month ago to make ventilators. Can't our intelligent engineers and tradespeople in Connecticut find ways to retool our military hardwood industries to repair our roads, make better parks, housing, hospitals? And wouldn't the people in these Pentagon industries, like the veterans, feel better about themselves if their plants were geared to life rather than destruction? I think it's time for all of us, for Connecticut, for the USA, to have a change of minds and a change of heart. Thank you all for listening and for supporting in these days of great reckoning for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your testimony. It is greatly appreciated. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much. For those that are testifying on tonight, we do have a hard stop of 3 minutes for the testimony. We have many people that are lined up to testify with us tonight. So please give us patience. We don't want to cut anyone off, but we do have a pretty lengthy lineup. Next, we have Ernest Pagan. If you can state your name and address for the record.
You're muted, sir. You gotta unmute.
Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I support the referendum of health and climate crisis by transferring funds from military budget to cities for human needs, jobs, and environmentally sustainable economy. What we've seen with the pandemic of the COVID-19 and the high unemployment rates and the homelessness that New Haven already faces, it's time for a change. It's time to invest in people, not profits. I believe that budget for the military is based off of profit. I don't see us being at war. We have a president that's in place who wants to sick the war to Black men or minorities in America. I don't think that we should have to pay for that as a taxpayer, and people over profits. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernest. Could you state your name and address for the record for us?
Ernest Pagan, 135 Lowen Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
Are there any members of the committee that have any questions for us? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Oh, next, we have Erica Hollahan of the Peace Commission. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Erica Hollahan. My address is 182 Willard Street, New Haven. I'd like to thank the alders and the committee for having testimonies tonight and for listening so diligently and graciously to what people are saying tonight. I'm a clinical social worker. I work with individuals, groups, families in therapy. And in the past year, I've seen an uptick in anxiety, trauma, fear amongst my clients around the city and surrounding areas. And it's somewhat unprecedented. It's really, people come in and talk about what's happening in the world and how it impacts them, and especially in their close communities. And it's especially in New Haven, I think, and people struggling to have food to eat, and with education and with violence and discrimination. It's been a really challenging year for me as a provider, but mostly for my clients. And I very strongly support this referendum. I think, this week has been particularly very, very, very challenging for many people. And I think sometimes we forget that, that the images from around the world are not as present to us when these awful things are happening in our country. So I feel strongly that militarization, especially in this country and around the world, has done so much destruction, and we don't always remember it when it's not in our face. So I really want to change that, and I'm hopeful that this referendum will do that. I think we need to move beyond not wanting to harm people to really working really hard to remove harm from people's lives and help people create safety and self.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much, Erica, for your testimony.
Okay, so next up is Lucas Moe, but I do not see Lucas in the attendees list. So if somebody's if Lucas, you're using something else, raise your hand. And then New Grove Trade Center. If there's someone representing them, we have a name for New Grove. If there's someone here from that, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll go on to Catalina. Maya.
Yes, we have a raised hand.
We do. Let's see what. Maya, who you representing?
I'm here to represent the Answer Coalition. There seemed to have been some kind of miscommunication where the Pride Center signed on to this, but did not send somebody to speak and was not going to testify. So the Answer Coalition should be on the list of people testifying.
Okay, we'll add you. Right now
Yep.
we're
Yep, Al, I'll take it. Well, since you're here, you can just state your name and address for the record and testify. You have 3 minutes.
All right, and again, I'm testifying on behalf of the Answer Coalition.
Yep.
My name is Maya, M-A-I-A, Leonardo. My address and my last name is spelled Leonardo. My address is 110 Pendleton Street, New Haven, Connecticut. And this is my testimony. Two epidemics, COVID and police violence, are disproportionately affecting Black and brown people at home, while the U.S. military menaces them abroad. Where's the money for PPE, testing, and developing community-based justice? Why are billions of dollars going to the military? With 800 bases around the world, the U.S. military serves as a tool to project the will of the United States government and punish countries whose aims run counter to those of the U.S. Yet the military does nothing to protect us from the existential threat of climate change. In fact, the U.S. military is the world's biggest polluter. With the almost $800 billion spent on the military annually, healthcare, housing, and jobs could be ensured for every person in the United States, and the transition to a fossil fuel-free economy could begin. Instead, money gets poured into projects like fighter jets and nuclear weapons that don't make people's lives better or keep us safer. People talk about military spending bringing jobs to the state, but they're not always quality jobs. Electric boat workers, for example, had to work in unsafe conditions at the start of the COVID epidemic. We need to invest in legions of green jobs and convert the military-industrial complex to produce useful goods. It is imperative that we move away from fossil fuels and take steps to fight climate change. With war rhetoric from both parties targeting China now, the people need to speak up to demand that Congress stop approving endless funding for endless wars. The best way to support the troops is to bring them home.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, again, thank you very much for your representation of the Answer Coalition. Next, we have Catalina Holman. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Catalina Holman. I live in 194 Kenner Street. I am from the New Haven Climate Movement, and in 10 years it will be 2030. In 10 years we could wait. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. Okay, in 10 years, it will be 2030. In 10 years, we could live in a world where temperatures in land and ocean regions are warmer than they are now, or not. We could live in a world where sea level rise, droughts, floods, and forest fires are normal, or not. We could live in a world where the polluted air continues to cause respiratory issues and kill millions of people, or not. We could live in a world where the future generations will not grow up where certain species because their habitats were destroyed by the rising global temperatures, or not. We could live in a world where certain people are more vulnerable to disease, losing their homes and starving, and so many other consequences of climate change, all because of the status of our country, or not. The decisions we make today will impact our future. So by putting this question on election ballots, we are letting the people dictate their futures rather than billionaires determine our future. If we dedicate the same amount of money we do to the military, but to the climate crisis, we could implement shift to we could implement shift the we could shift the US power grid to 100% renewable energy.
1 minute.
Both the military and the climate crisis are important, but what is the point in fighting for our country that might not be functional in a decade or so? By putting this question on election ballots, we are taking steps towards saving our future, and here in New Haven and all over the country. Thank you, and I hope you have a good day.
Thank you so much, Catalina, and we hope you have a good day as well. But before you go, we're going to see if we have any questions from members of the committee. Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. We will now load on deck.
Hello?
You muted yourself, Mr. Chair.
I muted myself. There we go. Henry Lohendorf should be loaded in, and Dory Dumas if she is here. Leslie is before us. Leslie Blateau of who are we representing today? New Haven Public Schools Advocates.
New Haven
Please
Public
state-
School Advocate.
Yep.
Good evening. 410 Greenwich Avenue in New Haven. When it comes to public schools throughout the United States, and even more specifically in cities like New Haven, year after year, the headlines are the same. Another deficit, another budget crisis, layoffs, more programs cut, and more schools closed. The false narrative of failing public schools distracts us from reality. It's the needs of the children in our community and investing in higher education. The federal government overfunds the military for imperialism and violence. Too often we hear from decision makers that there just isn't enough money to fully fund our schools. Their attempts to remedy the crisis lead to harmful budget cuts in other areas, such as care, nutrition, housing, and transportation. So much do when so much of our federal tax dollars is spent on weapons of war, and we say enough is enough. The federal discretionary budget is a moral disgrace. More than 50% of the over $1 trillion discretionary spending budget goes to the military, and this equals over $500 billion a year wasted from only 6% priorities are good and federal leaders are accountable. We demand change. We know what schools need. It is possible for communities. Every school, teachers, paraprofessionals, libraries, counselors, and supported development of the same project-based and world language or education practices covered like love to be added under current whim. The essential high quality and appropriate education must be prioritized.
1 minute.
When we demand the transfer of funds from the military to our schools and our communities, these priorities are easily funded. This country is in crisis. It comes policy, all of them. The militarization of police is an violence and white supremacists. What numerous concrete steps we can take to address these systemic problems? The focus this evening is the federal budget, which perpetuates the government's ongoing attacks on peace, human rights, justice, and healthy communities. Another world is the support the referendum and demand a federal budget that reflects the values of the majority of Americans who support peace and justice. Thank you, alders. Appreciate being here tonight.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We will now seek any questions from members of the committee for Leslie. Seeing none, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Take care.
Next, we have Henry Lohendorf of the Greater New Haven Peace Council. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Alders, for holding this important hearing. I chair the Greater New Haven Peace Council. I'm going to make 4 points and we'll try to connect the referendum we are discussing with the painful and shameful violence we are witnessing in so many cities throughout our beloved country. In 1967, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. spoke these words, quote, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death," unquote. The fact is that every year our government spends twice as much on building killing machines and on killing humans as it does on all other programs, twice as much. That is spiritual death. Every Connecticut congressional representative, including Congresswoman DeLauro, Senators Blumenthal and Murphy, votes every year to pour hundreds of billions of our tax dollars into the bottomless pit of the military-industrial complex. When we complain that there's not enough money for education or healthcare or roads or clean water or affordable housing, they sympathize with us. But it rings hollow because they have already determined with their votes that the money goes for killing and not human uplift. Every time the Pentagon aims more dollars to Electric Boat, United Technologies, or Sikorsky, our representatives crow about how many jobs are created, but those jobs are not building high-speed trains and boats. They're not manufacturing wind turbines for clean energy. They are not producing medical equipment to save us from pandemics. They are manufacturing death machines. Third point, our representatives in Washington refuse to discuss converting from the war economy. That is why we have no choice but to act at the local level with this referendum. They won't do it unless we demand it. If we want to save our city, we have no choice. Martin Luther King, finally, Martin Luther King connected poverty, racism, and militarism. When this country spends so much on fighting wars, it is inevitable that our own society will become militarized. King pointed to the violence in our streets he saw in 1967 with the war in Vietnam. We see it today with wars on Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, and so many others. The people of those countries are treated as less than human. In city after city in the United States, the police are militarized and act like an occupying army. Our families, our neighbors, and in particular, all people of color are treated as less than human. War abroad and at home are the result of a racist imperial system.
30 seconds.
The world watches in horror. Glorifying war is glorifying racism. Last paragraph. The USA is watching New Haven. Putting this referendum on the ballot and passing it is an important step in putting human needs above war, poverty, and racism. We have to do this because no one else will. Thank you.
Perfect. We have a pro. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Lorendorf, for your long-term service to the city. Next, we have John Lee of LEAP. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is John Lee. I live at 699 Elm Street and the Edgewood neighborhood. And thank you for this space. So I'm giving testimony tonight because I, along with a lot of the people I've heard from, believe that we need to shift our understanding of security away from national borders and towards the resilience of our local communities. Doing so will allow us to stand strong and unified in the face of rising challenges that are really indifferent to military might. We've heard on those, including climate, systemic racism, poverty, and more. These radical and transformative changes that we deserve and need require sufficient resources and funds, which should be procured from our nation's gross military budget. I recently started organizing with New Haven Rising, and I've realized that a common criticism of the revenue campaign is the question of whether Yale paying its fair share of taxes in New Haven will create solutions for our city's systemic issues. There seems to be skepticism that without a plan or vision of what change we enact, an assumption that that plan or vision doesn't exist, that funding will go to waste. But it's really not a question of adequate funds or vision, one without the other. We definitely need both, and the action of demanding funds be redirected from the military budget towards human needs is similar to demanding that Yale pay its fair share, an action of solidarity that really works towards vision building in our community and in understanding that that can happen. Here in New Haven, in our Dixwell and Newhallville neighborhoods, out of King Robinson, we work with our 7 to 12-year-old children. Even our 7 and 8-year-old boys and girls are well aware of the challenges that they face every day in their neighborhoods. In fact, obviously, they're the ones who are most aware of these challenges. A lack of safe spaces to play, overcrowded classrooms, underfunded NICU programs. For their families, a lack of good jobs. At our Dixwell Leap site, we've been asking our kids, our future community leaders, to think about how we can address these challenges and bring about radical, sustained change for our communities. As our kids dream big, we owe them the resources to actualize their dreams. To do this in community would be the most beautiful vision that I can imagine. And that's why I think that building around transferring funds from our military budget to the needs of our New Haven family truly matters to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of this committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, we have Eleazar Lenzat from New Haven Rising.
Hello, thank you. My name is Eleazar Lanzat from, I live at 430 Whaley Avenue here in New Haven. And like I said, I'm here representing New Haven Rising in support of the resolution. In the past few weeks, we have seen a slight lifting of quarantine measures. Some are going to restaurants, small gatherings are being permitted, and there is some promise for school to begin this upcoming fall. These are glimmers of hope in what can only be described as a bleak time in our history. These were signs of normal, but in what I can only describe as the cruelest reminder that, quote, normal was grim, is the murder of George Floyd at the hands of a police officer. These recent events remind me that his death was not a result of a, quote, bug in our system. It's what the system has been built to do. And that's why I'm here to talk about this system. Year after year, city, state, and federal budgets continue to prioritize the military and the militarization of police departments. Many departments are equipped with state-of-the-art gear made to inflict as much damage as possible and to intimidate the people they have been sworn to protect and serve. At the same time, budgets for education, health, and fighting the climate crisis are cut over and over again to the detriment of our communities. When there are any budget shortfalls, the cuts are not aimed at these militarized institutions. Instead, the first cuts are made to education and public assistance and other necessary services. This is all while corporations and large institutions refuse to pay their fair share. This pattern has repeated itself for generations. And now that we have a global pandemic where our most vulnerable citizens are put into the most dire situations, institutions responsible for helping us are hobbled.
1 minute.
During the beginning of this pandemic, hospital workers had such inefficient protective gear that they were forced to use garbage bags for protection. But as soon as people started protesting the death of an innocent man, the police force came out and showed once again how violent they were. We can now go back to normal because normal left too many innocent dead and many more in desperate and hopeless situations. We must move forward to a place where our schools are fully funded and those who fall in bad times have the assistance to get back up. We can now go back to normal, where as a society, we spent more money oppressing and murdering than affirming people's lives. We must allow people to live lives of safety, decency, and health. But this won't happen if our leaders do not fully believe and make the investments necessary to move to a brighter future. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any members of the committee that may have a question or comment? Seeing none, again, thank you so much for your testimony. Have a good night. Next, we have Pamela Muzan, and I'm sorry for
If I made a mistake on your last name, I'm making a lot of mistakes tonight. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, hello. My name is Pamela Muzan, and I live at 48 Henry Street in New Haven, Connecticut. I've been a New Haven resident all my life. The money currently budgeted for war outside our country should be converted to domestic funding in our own borders. We are fighting wars here on poverty, inequality, and worse from the pandemic. This is where the money from our tax dollars should be put so that this and future generations can be free to pursue opportunities that may not be there in the future. So my niece, who lives with me, can actually get an education to give her an opportunity for the future to pursue her dreams. Our education system was already having problems, and now the pandemic has made it worse. My niece is in first grade, going to second grade, so she's just starting her school career, and she will not have the opportunity to have that face-to-face with her teachers she needs. We need the money and the resources to be allocated so that she can help in her education and to pursue her dreams in the future. So I thank you, Alderman, for this time, and I urge the Health and Human Services Committee to vote in favor of putting the non-binding referendum on the ballot in November. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony on tonight. Next, we have Bill Armstrong of Literacy Volunteers of Greater New Haven. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello. It's nice to be here. It's William Armstrong. I live at 1181 Whitney Avenue in Hamden. Let me just. I've been a resident of New Haven and the immediate vicinity for 37 years, and an employee of the New Haven Free Public Library for 23 years, and a board member of Literacy Volunteers of Greater New Haven for 6 years, where I now have the honor of serving as president of the board. During my time in New Haven, a long time, I've witnessed the maturing of the global economy, the birth of the digital age, and explosion of wealth for some in the United States that is unparalleled in world history. What I've not seen is an improvement in the standard of living for the majority of men and women whose communities I have served for so many years. I still see New Haven neighborhoods mired in the same poverty as when I came here so many years ago, and as they had already been before I arrived. When where family heads moved from job to job, apartment to apartment, struggling to provide the basics for their children. What I've not seen is support for a school system that struggles to graduate youth properly prepared to make safe and constructive lives for themselves in our city. A vast number of the adults I work with are trying desperately to put together safe, fulfilling lives after the pernicious effects of chronic poverty have cast them into the wildernesses of our society. What I see is a city and state whose infrastructure crumbles along wealth lines, stealing yet more time and resources from people struggling to make ends meet. Our United States military, which is rightly feared and respected the world over, has shown how effective the government can be when providing for the common defense. I would like to see what our government could do for our citizens were we to promote the general welfare of our citizens to the same degree. For these reasons, I ask that the board add the requested referendum to the ballot.
1 minute.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any members of the committee looking to ask a question or a comment at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Armstrong, for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Suat. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, Swat Bashar, you say, 560 Whaley Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut. Thank you very much, and my prayers to the victims of racist violence and condolences to their families. It is a shame that there is bipartisan support for some new submarine, some new aircraft carrier, ultimately designed to kill. Whereas something as simple as a personal protective equipment, masks, COVID thing, becomes a controversial issue. I think this is shameful, and the country needs a new direction, and a referendum is, I believe, will be an important step in this direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much and have a good evening.
Same to you.
Next, we have Molly Wheeler. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and thank you for your service. My name is Molly Wheeler. I live at 49 West Rock Avenue, New Haven. I ask that we all consider a shared vision we have for our city, wherein beneath all of the pieces of municipality and community that we so often rightfully keep in focus, we center beliefs that I will assume we all share, that each and every human have the simple dignities to be fed, clothed, and housed. Before COVID-19, we knew that each of our sisters and brothers did not have these. And since the pandemic started, we see ever more clearly how many different lives are being led within the boundaries of our small city. Peter Morin, co-founder of the Catholic Worker Movement, along with Dorothy Day, said, "It is easier to be good." It is a simple statement, but also one that provides profound opportunities with each decision that we make. We can, over and over, look at our choices and determine which among them hold goodness, are good. Budgets are moral documents full of choices that serve as a kind of umbrella over humans and their shared, distinct, and constant needs. If what people need is not sufficiently represented in a budget, then good has not been done. Our current military budget has no goodness, and its mighty funds do not include the basic needs of people. I therefore ask that we demand the right to identify the enormous amounts of money that cannot and will not be used for our shared and simple needs, and transfer all money, not good, toward people, all of whom deserve love, care, and dignity. Peter Morin also coined the term gentle personalism, a simple and immediate approach to focusing on the freedom and dignity of each person by looking after one another through acts of support and mercy, seeking to move away from individualism and toward the responsibility that we all have for one another. These acts of support and mercy can be very private and small, happening near us always and unobserved. But these acts of support and mercy can also be guaranteed by allocating money toward a budget that supports our most simple dignities, to be fed, clothed, and housed. We are all fed, clothed, and housed when we have jobs, affordable housing, healthcare, and fully funded social services. In choosing good, I support the ballot referendum toward demanding a moral budget that provides each and everyone the simple dignities that we yet do not all have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much, Molly. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Next, we have Kim Stoner. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Kim Stoner, and I live at 76 Royden Road. I'm speaking on behalf of the Connecticut Climate Crisis Mobilization, which endorsed the call for the referendum this weekend. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee. You've already heard many of these statistics, so I'll go through them quickly. The direct military spending in the fiscal year ending in September 2020 will amount to $746 billion, more than $2 billion a day, more than $1 million per minute. In addition, the US military is the largest institutional consumer of fossil fuels in the world. Since beginning the war on terror in 2001, the US military has emitted 1.2 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases. This is more than double the annual greenhouse gas emissions of all the automobiles in the United States. The Pentagon's greenhouse gas emissions in 2017 were greater than those of entire countries, such as Sweden, Denmark, and Portugal, and also greater than all the greenhouse gases from the US production of iron and steel. Our congressional representative, Rosa DeLauro, along with all the other Connecticut representatives, consistently votes to maintain and increase the military budget, justifying those votes with the needs for jobs. But studies from Brown University have shown that military spending produces fewer jobs per dollar spent than spending on education, healthcare, or clean renewable energy. My group is very much interested in green manufacturing, the kind of work that would employ the technical skills that are used in defense manufacturing in Connecticut.
1 minute.
And so we'd create more jobs if the money were devoted to green manufacturing as opposed to defense spending. Our endless wars all over the world since 2001 have killed over 800,000 people and have not added to the peace or security of our country. In this moment of crisis, we desperately need to re-examine our priorities as a city, a state, and a nation. We need investment in the health of all of our people. We need an emergency transition to green energy and emergency efforts to mitigate the damage that climate change that is already built in will do to our coastal city. We need to speak out to those who represent us in Washington and tell them that it's time to change our priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Next, we have Marcy Jones. Please state your name and address. For the record, you have 3 minutes.
You're muted, Marcy. You gotta unmute.
I apologize. I am Marcy Jones, 7 Beemore Drive, New Haven, Connecticut. Good evening. I am representing the New Haven People Center today. I support adding a non-binding referendum to shift money from the military budget to cities and human needs on New Haven's military budget, the ballot actually, because in our current time, we're forced out of eating and being advised healthy habits as it is. I'm sorry, my uncle just passed away of COVID, so I'm sorry guys, it just hit me for a minute.
Take your time.
Not being able to obtain the healthcare needs or obtain the food to aid in keeping our impoverished families healthy right now will be detrimental to the predicted outbreak during the fall of COVID-19. My daughter's environmental allergies in the past few years have gone from costing me $80 a month for 2 months to $80 a month for 6 months. The predicted outbreak in the fall promises to be worse. We have seen how this virus has attacked the Black and brown people in New Haven. We will do minimum to prepare for the health and climate crisis, which will be underway and doubled by adding influenza cases in the fall. Adding our voice is a must. We will still be in financial strain in New Haven, myself being self-employed, and I'm sorry about my puppy. Also, making a decision now to allow the people of New Haven a voice will ensure a level of economical stability, making the cases for mental stability less.
1 minute.
I'm claiming health and wellness for us all. Now, We rely on you to do as much as you can to add the necessary referendum, allowing New Haven to breathe, walk, and talk with a feeling of support by sharing a straightforward opinion on ballot. The People's Center is just that. We want the people's opinion to always remain at the center of factual need. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions from members of the committee? And we'd like to give our sincere condolences to you and your family. Next, we have Fred Brown. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, my name is Fred Brown. I live at 175 Fairfield Street in New Haven. I've been a resident. I was born here in Connecticut to a blue-collar family. I lived here all my life, with the exception of the time that I spent in the United States military during the Vietnam era. I returned from service and I entered the job markets, raised a family. And I remember back in the 60s, of the nuclear war and the arms race. I was much younger. I recall a salesman coming up and selling a bomb shelter to my parents. And I remember the racial tensions, experience inequality. And years later, I learned the true cost of war. I'm one of the lucky ones who survived and is able to stand here before you and testify today. 50 years later, we've made some strides in the country, moving forward in a positive direction. However, our leaders still persist in spending billions of dollars on weapons of destruction with a disregard for the problems our society faces in these days of turmoil and civil unrest. Now at 64 years, I live with cancer each day and all that goes with it. My days are filled with focus on the promotion for world peace, as it helps me stay positive and work for the greater good of all mankind. I do this consciously with activism through music and community organizations such as the Peace Commission. I fully endorse the referendum that's put before you. And I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Next, we have Paul Hodel or Hodel. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
You need to unmute yourself, Mr. Hodel. Did we lose Mr. Hodel? Mr. Hodel? Okay.
Next on deck, we have Ian Scoggart. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Ian Scoggart. I live at 42 Cleveland Road in New Haven, and I'm with the People's Center and also New Haven Rising. Dear members of the Health and Human Services Committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of the non-binding referendum. Shall Congress prepare the health and climate crisis for the health and climate crisis by transferring funds from military budget to cities for human needs, jobs, and environmentally sustainable economy? My answer is a resounding yes. It is time for change. Our present day energy system is too dependent on fossil fuels, an outmoded form of energy that threatens the viability of our planet. We need to change to an alternative, more sustainable energy system now. How do we pay for it? The government already has the money. It just needs to be reallocated. Far too much money goes to far too much of our money goes to the military. We already have enough weapons to destroy the world 100 times over. The arsenal of one Trident submarine can send the world into nuclear winter. We have 13 of them. As awful as the present moment is, and I'm referring to the pandemic, it is an opportunity to make fundamental changes. We will not have this chance again. I encourage the Board of Alders to take the initiative to pass this referendum and show the state and country that the future is now, and we need to reset our priorities and how we spend our wealth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Skogert, for your testimony and your longtime service to the city.
Thank you.
Next, we will try Mr. Hodel. Please state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chair, this is
Yes.
Joelle, and Paul has sight problems. He can't see how, and my husband is on the phone with him trying to walk him through how to unmute. So that's what's happening.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we'll keep him on deck until he's ready. Next, we have Lola Johnson. Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, we'll come back to Ms. Johnson. Because we can't hear you, Ms. Johnson. So while we work that out. So here.
All right, Isaac Chase.
These issues. Hello?
Yes, we hear you. Please state
Hello,
your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Isaac Chase, and I live at 100 York Street in New Haven. And I'm pleased that we could talk about this at this very difficult time. On April 16th, 1953, President Eisenhower, he said in a speech, every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. And in 2003, during the Iraq War, I found this website. It's called costofwar.com, the National Priorities Project, and it's the website is still available. So since 2003, I occasionally check what they have to say. I'm sorry, what?
You may continue.
Okay. So on this website, costofwar.com, the National Priorities Project, they talk about the trade-offs between the money that could be going towards war and the trade-offs, what the money could be going towards. Instead of towards war. The total cost of war since
I'm holding it, and
2001.
it comes up briefly, and then it goes away.
Oh, let me try.
No, you're
Yeah,
okay.
I see.
It's not you. We actually have Mr. Hodel on the line, and he's
Hello?
unmuting himself. Yes, we hear you.
Oh,
you can hear me?
Yes. So we're actually going to put you on mute briefly. And
They're telling me, they say that they can hear me, and they're gonna.
Sorry, Mr. Chase. You may continue, and we'll
to
suspend the
continue?
time.
Oh.
We'll suspend the time.
Oh, okay. So on the costofwar.com, it talks about the total cost of war since 2001. The total cost of war since 2001 is $5,100,000,000. 5,100,897,719,870. Every hour, 32.8 million is spent on wars. And instead, here are just some of the trade-offs. There are more, but here are just some. $61.4 million could be spent in elementary school teachers for a year. 66.6 million clean energy jobs could be spent for a year. 88.79 million could be spent in infrastructure jobs for a year. $553.61 million could be spent on Head Start slots for children for 1 year. My sister is a Head Start teacher. She would love that. And 199.7 million students could receive Pell Grants for a year. And 477.46 million veterans could receive VA medical care for 1 year. So those are just some of the trade-offs that could be received if the money didn't go, if all that money didn't go to those trillions didn't go towards wars. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony and your patience. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Chase, for your time.
Sure.
Next, we will have Mr. Hodel. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Paul Hodel. I live at 66 Edgewood Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut, 06511. I am speaking here both for myself and for the Peace and Social Outreach Committee of the New Haven Friends Meeting, also known as Quakers. We have taken strong stands throughout our whole history of being opposed to military spending and looking for priorities that focus on human needs and human betterment, care for the environment, care for a whole world. Our world would be so much more secure were we to reduce the military spending that goes on here and put it into human needs programs and programs that would meet the needs of people who live in cities and throughout our country and indeed the whole world. It would be a wonderful opportunity for us to really make the major stand that this referendum is calling for citizens of our city and our country to uphold. New Haven, I will say, is I've been in New Haven for a long time. We have had other referenda over the years that have pushed for alternatives to our excessive military spending and looked for ways to enhance the city and security here at home and abroad. Again, I strongly support this referendum, and we do in the New Haven Friends meeting, and we're hoping to help educate the general public as we approach the November election. This is a major step for us to take, and I want to be a part of this effort. It's very important for us to use this both as a way to cast a vote, but then to educate the general public. So we'll continue to work towards the vision of a world at peace for all and a city that will be at peace and where we'll have the needs of all our people in our community met. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Hodel. Now, I'm going to take the chairman's privilege at the moment. I realize we have Lola Johnson here. I am actually going to, unfortunately, have to step away. This is not the normal time for our meeting. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone for your patience in the changing of the time, in particular the Peace Commission, of having this hearing on today. I'm going to have we're going to witness the peaceful transition of power to our vice chair. Hope to see that in November too, but January. But anyway, we'll have our vice chair, Ron Hurt. He will continue on this meeting. I would like to state for the record my full-throated support. I have been supportive of this particular item for many years at this point, and I want to see this. Let's take this home. That's a message to members of the committee. As a temporary chair, Alder Winter, you are up, and you will take on the duties of timekeeper. Thank you very much. And next, I will now introduce Lola Johnson. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lola Johnson, 65 Dwight Street, New Haven, Connecticut. I've been living in New Haven ever since 1954. I'm from North Carolina. I enjoyed all the testimonies so far. I'm sorry when you called me before, I was muted and I wasn't thinking. I was so busy. Anyway, forgive me. I enjoyed all the testimonies, and I want you to know that I'm with you guys 100% on this. And I just hope when November comes up, voting comes up, that this is on the ballot and everybody votes, and we will be 100% better off than we are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Is there any questions or comments from members of our committee? Are there any questions or comments from the members of our committee? One more time, any questions or comments from the members of our committee? Seeing none, our next speaker, Mr. Lucas.
Seth Godfrey, he's in the room.
Mr. Godfrey, please state your name, your address, and begin.
My name is Seth Godfrey. I am I live at 421 Whitney Avenue, New Haven, and basically a lifelong resident. And I work at the New Haven Free Public Library as a librarian. It is here this evening. I want to thank the City of New Haven Peace Commission, the Board of Alders, Health and Human Services Committee for holding this hearing for the referendum on the ballot November 3rd. New Haven is a model city and one with great time-honored progressive values. This referendum is important as to how we can do our part, not just as citizens of New Haven, but of this planet and the struggle for social needs to be met, and not the insatiable appetite of the Pentagon and the military-industrial complex. As we have spent the last few months in quarantine and with time to contemplate what will be the new normal in a post-pandemic world, I, for one, know that true and meaningful repair and healing for a distressed society as ours is to begin with questioning why we have a massive infusion of funds that were earmarked by politicians for death and destruction and endless wars that lead to incredible human suffering and massive loss of lives, civilian and military here and abroad. Will our congressional representatives in Connecticut step up to the plate and value the noble work of these august bodies, the City of New Haven Peace Commission and the Board of Alders Health and Human Service Committee in creating and putting forward this referendum, and in a truly and meaningful way, work for the conversion. Work for a conversion that will, sorry about that, to accomplish the goal of peace and justice, and that is political will on the part of politicians. I believe this referendum will be a new step forward for peace and prosperity on November 3rd. And also with this new normal, I trust the electorate across the USA will vote the warmongers out of office. I can only hope, and I put my trust and faith in the American electorate, that we can finally say goodbye to the axis of evil, Trump, Pence, McConnell, and all the belligerent and misanthropic cronies who are leading this country into death, destruction, chaos, and confrontation, and a collision course for wars. Thank you for allowing me to present my testimony this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Godfrey. Is there any questions or comments from members of our committee? Are there any questions or comments from members of our committee? Once again, any questions or comments from members of our committee? Seeing none, we're going to our next speaker.
That is the end of those who have signed up. So it is open for those of you who we have not called. If you want to speak, if you raise your hand, we will bring you in. You raise your hand if you'd like to speak. And one last call for hand raisers. If you would like to speak. We got one. Brazil, hang on. Let me bring you in, sir. Okay, Mr. Brazil, if you unmute yourself, you can start speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Brazil. Please state your name and your address for the records.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Brazil. Please state your name and your address for the records. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Jim Brazel. I'm at 68 Garfield Street in Newington, Connecticut. And I'm a member of Veterans for Peace. I would just like to read a statement from our organization. I am writing as a member of Veterans for Peace, Connecticut, Chapter 42, in support of the need to transfer funds from a military budget now in excess of over $700 billion each year to a budget that invests those funds to cities in an effort to avoid the outcome mentioned by Martin Luther King in his Beyond Vietnam speech in April 1967, where he said, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death." Now, Veterans for Peace Connecticut has more than 20 members and supporters throughout Connecticut. In addition to a number of friends that support our efforts, we are part of Veterans for Peace International organization trying to educate the public on the true costs of war. You can find us on veteransforpeace.org. Some of our members from Connecticut have been in combat areas of the world that have seen the direct results of the United States combat operations in foreign countries over the years. Members that were witness to murder, bodily humiliation of the enemy in combat, and American military malfeasance. War that resulted in thousands of American casualties is just as important, but wars that resulted in thousands of American casualties and just as important, but never mentioned, the deaths, destruction, and unimaginable injury to hundreds of thousands of people in foreign lands. These conflicts do not result in the improvement of the vast majority of participants involved on either side of these events, with the one exception being the people and corporations invested in the manufacturing and distribution of weapons that make these wars possible and give them motivation to continue to make profits today. It might have been possible that after all these years of horrible events of those wars, we would have realized that future conflicts and avoid them. But what is obvious is that
30
more
seconds.
recent wars like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya shows that profits over people is still our policy. So we support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brazil. Are there any questions or comments coming from members of our committee? Any questions or comments for Mr. Brazil coming from our committee? Once again, any questions or comments coming from members of our committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Brazil. Are there anyone else from the public wishing to make a public testimony? If so, please raise your hand. Cheryl Wilkins, please. State your name, your address for the records. You have 3 minutes. You may begin. Unmute yourself.
You're up, Ms. Wilkins. We need you to unmute. Yep.
You are up, Ms. Wilkins.
I don't know if she hears us.
Yes, hi, my name is
All right.
Cheryl. Yes, hi, my name is Cheryl Wilkins. I live at 102 Brownell Street, New Haven, Connecticut, 06511. I'm here representing New Grove Praise Center, Church of God in Christ. I understand that in this country today, there's a mindset, and the mindset says that if you are poor, if you are less fortunate, if you're Black, if you're different, you don't really deserve our time, you don't deserve our hand, you don't deserve our money. And kind of just throw us a bone, and feel as though that's all we deserve. A lot of people feel as though the 1% is the majority, but I feel like the people are the majority. The 1% is only the majority only because they have the resources and they have the influence. Without that, they are the minority. And by any means necessary, willing to keep what they have. And I say due to the noise that has been going on in the US of A for many, many, many years, now we see here we have a pandemic, we have people that are lashing out, and you only can take a knee in the neck for so long in regards to politics, in regards to prejudice and different things of that nature. And I understand.
Take yourself off of mute, Ms. Wilkins.
Looks like she froze on us, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, well, should we go?
Yeah, there she's back.
Okay.
Well, you got to mute, Ms. Wilkins. Unmute, Ms. Wilkins.
Ms. Wilkins, can you unmute?
I think our audio is not working.
Okay.
For what it's worth, we're at 30 seconds.
Okay. She's very compassionate about it. You can tell. Huh?
Okay, so she'll notice because it'll move her.
Okay. Is there any else from the public wishing to testify? Is there anyone else from the public wishing to testify? I ask again, is there anyone else from the public wishing to testify? Seeing none, is there a motion to close this public session on the floor?
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made to close this portion of the public hearing of our committee, and we will go into deliberation.
You need a motion. You need a motion.
Motion to go into open deliberation with the committee. And a second.
Yeah, somebody needs to move the item. So you want to ask if someone is, Alder Winter? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I move the item.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Is there a second? The item has been moved.
And seconded.
And seconded.
So you're up for discussion now.
Okay. Something just happened to my, oh, all right.
He's just showing you the,
My screen just went blank on me, so forgive me.
no worries. Mickey sharing the item.
So thank you, Mickey.
Alder Winter has his hand up. Alder Vice Chair.
Yes, Mr. Alder Winter.
You muted yourself, Alder Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Al. And thank you to all the members of the public, both here in New Haven and the expert testimony from outside the city, for giving us a lot of really valuable context about why this measure is so important and showing us the overwhelming support that I think if we put this on the ballot, we will also see in the fall. The pandemic has exposed so many systemic issues in our society, the disparities in health, in wealth, in access to employment, and it's not enough for us to say we can only wonder what it would be like to have more resources from the federal government to address these issues when the lethal consequences of the virus rolling through and exposing the disparities is right in front of us. So we really need to speak to our federal delegation, and this motion will allow us to do something beyond just having our stamp on it as a board of alders and elected representatives in supporting this message. It allows the entire city to weigh in and speak with one voice. And I think that's a powerful message, and it's one that we need to send in order to seize this pandemic as an opportunity to change the course of how these federal funds are appropriated. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else from the committee? I want.
Alder Cupo has her hand up.
Alder Cupo.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just want to just thank the members of the public for being here tonight with us, providing really powerful, moving testimony about this item. And certainly, as the chair said before me and my colleague as well, you know, I hope that we as a committee can move this forward. Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alder Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to echo my colleagues and say thank you to all the members of the public for their testimony tonight, and to the members of the New Haven Peace Commission for their leadership in making this possible. And I look forward to this referendum being an opportunity for the city to express our sentiments about how federal funds should be prioritized towards health and education and other important needs in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another? Well, I would like to express my thanks to the Peace Commission, Acting Director, Acting Chair, Joel Fishman, and all those who in the public testified. I am one, I represent a ward in the 3rd Ward of the City of New Haven, which is dealing with so many issues that if the federal government would take the money that they're using in the military to reallocate it to other areas, I believe that my ward would be one of the beneficiaries of the resources. We have 30% of our community goes to sleep. Our young children go to sleep hungry. We have affordable housing issues. We have unemployment, high unemployment rates in our ward. People are struggling. And if this money was geared towards the needs of the people instead of the need of feeling to kill, for lack of a better term, I think we would be a better off country. This pandemic, as I repeat what my colleague from the 21st Ward has stated, it has brought out it has uncovered a lot of wrong in this country. We need a healing in this country. We need peace in this country. And I support this resolution. I hope that my colleagues across the board will support this. I would like to see this on the ballot in November, along with our chair, Chair Brackeen. I'm indebted to the work of the Peace Commission, and my hat goes off to you, and I applaud you for all the hard work that you do for our city and for the people. Thank you so very much. Is there anyone else? I would like to, we're going to take a vote on this, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, Al Lucas. Forgive me, y'all. This is my first time.
Yep, you're doing great.
Okay.
It's time to vote.
We'd like to take a vote, and we're going to do, is this going to be a roll call or just a?
Well, since you're practicing, go ahead, do a roll call.
Okay, great. A roll call. I myself, I am in support of this. Alder Steve Winter.
I'm also in support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Ellen Kupo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm in support.
Alder Eli Sabin.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, it's unanimous, sir.
Unanimous. The yeas have it. Thank you to all the members of the public. I would like to entertain the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you so very much.
Need to vote? Yeah, 1 second. Now you just have to vote on it.
I would like to take a vote.
That you can do by voice vote.
We can do that by voice vote. All in favor to close this session?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any discussion? The ayes have it. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.